Hello, I'm Sharice Speller, president of Greenville Pitt Public Access Television Corporation, commonly known as GPAT. We are continuing our citizenship series with Dave Davis, the director of the Pitt County Board of Elections. And today we're talking about Pitt County's voting districts and how they may be changed as a result of the 2020 census. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for coming back to GPAT.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we know that the U.S. Census was held, recently in 2020, and that the census can affect our voting districts. But before we get to that, can you review our current districts, congressional, state, local, school board, so that people will know where we are now?
Okay. The big one, start from the top and kind of go down. As far as federal wise, we have the congressional districts. Pitt County is split between the first and the third. Folks may be familiar with that because over the past 4 or 5 years, it seems like it changes every year as it goes through court and there's appeals and such. So right now, the lines that we have are from 2019, where things got settled there. And essentially for Pitt County, if you look at the Tar River, if you're north of the river, that's all Congressional 1. Now, Congressional 1 now does dip down through the western part, looking at the south of the river. Kind of goes to the western part, loops up a little bit into Greenville, and then back over to the east. And so everything below that kind of line there is in the third district. So it's majority of the county now is in the first district. So it's one of those things that stay tuned, it'll change. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in just a little bit. Yeah, because one of the things, go ahead and throw it out as a spoiler, is they're thinking that there's going to be a 14th congressional district added to North Carolina. So who knows what's going to happen with these lines.
Oh my.
Yeah. Now, North Carolina, looking at the state level, Senate is easy. All of Pitt County is in the 5th district. We share that with Greene County. So Greene and Pitt County are all 5th district. Then we get to the House, and it's a little bit easier than what it used to be, because now we have 2 districts that are all ours, the 8th and the 9th House districts. And then we've got the 12th district that's just the southern tip, kind of goes a little bit up towards Ayden and, covers Grifton. We share that with Lenoir County, but kind of to the west, we've got the 8th district. And to the east, we've got the 9th district. So we'll see if we're able to keep our own districts in the future.
That makes it easier.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now, commissioner districts, we've got 6 districts and then 3 super districts. So where 2 districts are combined, they're called a super district. They're the letter seats, A, B, and C. And they're combinations of the 1 through 6 seats. And we've got all of these maps on our website if folks want to go and look there. And I know the county has some of these maps too, as far as county commissioners and Board of Education. So we've got, it kind of varies depending on the district. The more districts you have, the way the lines go. And likewise with the Board of Education, there's 9 districts there. So, and that'll be interesting to see what happens with that, because that one was the current districts we have were actually created by the General Assembly, which usually local districts are, the lines are drawn by the local bodies like the county commissioners, Board of Education. Board of Elections, we don't draw any lines. So it's not us. We're just the messengers. But we'll see what happens with those 9 districts, if they get shifted any or moved all around, who knows, because we don't have any of the data yet. So we don't know what it's going to look like.
And kind of speaking of the data, we know the census is conducted every 10 years, with the latest one last year in 2020. How generally can the census affect, those voting districts?
The higher up you go from the local up to the federal, is the greater change you can see, or the bigger change, because you're talking about covering more geography. When you're looking at congressional districts, and that's where, as I mentioned before, we currently have 13 congressional districts in North Carolina, and looking at preliminary numbers now, they're saying that there's enough population increase to where they're going to need to add a 14th congressional district. So who knows how that's going to look. And if you look at the history of congressional districts in North Carolina from when it was established up to now, it's taken all kinds of shapes and flipped back and forth, where the numbering system right now starts in the east and moves to the west. Well, there's been times where it started in the west and moved to the east. So it's, who knows what will happen with it. But then you get down to the local levels where, you're covering less geography. There's usually not as much of a change when you're looking at a small area. So you'll see some adjustments like with commissioners, Board of Education, maybe some with Greenville City Council, because municipalities that have districts will have to redistrict too. So the city of Greenville and the town of Ayden, because Ayden has 5 wards, similar to Greenville having 5 council districts. So we'll probably see some adjustments, but not a great deal. Greenville, you'd see more definitely than Ayden because of student population coming and going, the university and the hospital and industries bringing people and people moving out.
So are the other towns in the county just like one district, like Farmville, Bethel, Grimesland, that sort of thing? They don't have, they're not split up like Greenville and Ayden.
That's right. That's right. Greenville is what everybody's used to as a regular districts. Ayden is what's called blended districts. And that's where for a candidate to file, they have to reside within the ward that they file for. But everybody in Ayden votes on every ward. So it's kind of a mix. It's one of those splits where you have to live there to file, but everybody votes for you.
What about Grifton that's kind of half in Pitt County, half in Lenoir County? How does that work?
Well, it's not as simple as it used to be because of some law changes we used to, because we have more of Grifton than Lenoir County does. So we had an agreement with Lenoir County and Grifton that Pitt County would do the election. But with law changes and various interpretations now, each county has to do their own election. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of Grifton voters in Lenoir County, but they have to go to whatever polling place they have there for Lenoir for the Grifton voters. And we have ours, and then we have to, whenever you're looking at results for Grifton, and it's similar, for some of our viewers from out of Pitt County, if you look at like Sharpsburg, Rocky Mount, other municipalities that cover more than one county, especially Sharpsburg with 3, because it's right there in the corner.
What a headache.
Yeah, you have to remember when you're looking at results on the state board's website to add those numbers together, go to each county. So don't just look at Pitt counties and these are the results. You got to go to Lenoir also and do the addition, adding those numbers together. Likewise with Edgecombe and Nash for Rocky Mount.
Wow. So when will we know or have an idea, how the districts will be affected? Kind of what's the timeline for that? Or do we have one?
Not really. It kind of depends on where you look. Normally by now, we'd already have the data, or the governing bodies would have the data and start looking at lines and what needs to be done. But because of the pandemic and various other situations, the data is delayed. And at one time, the Census Bureau was saying they should get the redistricting data out by the end of July. Now, what they are saying, and it's been the same for probably a month and a half now, that it's going to be at least by the end of September.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of really affecting the municipal elections. And that's why with Greenville, you have your regular filing period, but then Greenville and Ayden, because they're districts, their filing period is delayed a little bit to allow that time for the redistricting. And this is all by North Carolina law, by statute.
Mhm.
And looking at those statutes for this year, the lines would have to be done by July 21st. And
Wow.
filing begins, I think, the 23rd or 26th, so just a few days after that. So that's not going to happen with them pushing it back to September. But then, we're going to have to wait and see between what municipalities want to do and what the General Assembly tells us all to do
Mhm.
as to whether we have those elections this year or if they're moved to the primary of next year.
Mhm.
Right now, we're all proceeding as if, everything's going to happen, but just having in the back of our minds, we may not have an election this year. It may get pushed to next year. There's a lot of pros and cons for both points of view on that.
Mhm. Who makes that ultimate decision, I guess?
The General Assembly will.
Oh.
It's going to be up to them. And I've talked with Senator Don Davis about it. He was wanting to get from an elections point of view,
Mhm.
the ins and outs of it. How do you administer and run an election? If you say move the ones that are districts to next year and do the election for everybody, or what if you move everybody to next year? He kind of wanted to, hear
The
how would
pros
that
and
impact
cons.
everything.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons to it, as far as getting the data, delaying getting the data, knowing that you've got the accurate representation there as far as, the equal districts,
Mhm.
the way they're divided up. And so that way you're going to be voting in somebody who's, equally representing everybody. But then there's the other, where it's going to cut that term short because
Right.
they won't take office until much later. And then the people who are in now will hold on until the new folks are elected in. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of pros and cons. It kind of depends on your point of view as to which one really works. And then, there's cost, perspectives to it. And then the logistics of still a lot of what ifs depends on when we get these numbers, how fast the governing bodies can draw their lines. And then us, what happens then is they send the information and data to us, and we have to update our system with everybody's record as to what district they're in, if it's changed or not.
Right. That's a
So,
big task all by itself, isn't it?
exactly. And that's where Karen Brenson Bell, the director with the State Board of Elections, some of your viewers may have seen, I believe it was last month, she appeared to a state house committee to give a report on last year's election and looking ahead at the redistricting. And the State Board of Elections recommendation that she presented to them was to delay all elections from this year to the primary of next year,
Mhm.
and then to delay the March primary to May, which, for North Carolina, we're kind of used to that because we
Right.
did
We've done
May
that
primary
before.
for so long.
Yeah.
But then, we've had it moved up to March, at least for presidential primaries, kind of gets us in the
Mhm.
game rather than things already being decided for us. So there you're talking about possibly delaying these municipal elections until May of next year. So almost basically a 6 month delay.
Wow.
And that's what the General Assembly, and I know some of my counterparts across the state are hearing from their representatives, in the Senate and House, how will this work? What, and just trying to do their homework to figure out, what to do. And like I told Senator Davis, I said, whatever you do, this is one of those things where it's definitely, you're not going to be able to make everybody happy.
Right.
So it's going to be a tough job. I feel for them, but they're going to be the ultimate decider as to what happens.
And then once it's decided, to try to share that information with everybody so everybody kind of knows what's going on, that's going to be quite a chore too, especially when you're kind of off cycle,
Yes.
not doing things the usual way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and in addition, the change in districts can be confusing. So where do people go to get the information once it's decided?
The best source to see, without looking at a map, if you want to know my exact address, where am I at, is the State Board of Elections webpage, that NCSBE, as in stateboardelections.gov.
Mhm.
And you can go to the voter search, look up and see what your assigned jurisdictions are. Another good source, and I assume the General Assembly will do likewise what they have with the current districts. On their webpage, they have an interactive map where you can actually, for congressional, Senate, and House, you can put in your address or any address, and it'll tell you what district you're in. It'll tell you, and also you'll see it on a map.
Uh-huh.
So that'll be a good tool also that folks can use. Be careful with some of the sites as we're in the heart of redistricting, because some are going to be able to update their websites and the GIS data in the background that's running these web pages faster than others. So it's ultimately, if you really want to know 100%, is just contact our office where we can tell you, yes, we've got that updated and your district is,
Right.
or we can tell you, hold on a second, we'll get
We're
that
working on it,
decision
right?
to you. Exactly.
So new districts can mean new opportunities for people who are interested in running for office, especially if they create a whole nother congressional district. That'd be interesting. So what are the general requirements for people who are looking to run for office?
Yeah.
Are there any?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, for the congressional, that's the most interesting one because it is the only one that you don't have to reside in the district to run for that seat.
Wow.
And that's just based on the U.S. Constitution. So that falls under the federal law, and it was very broad, of course, centuries ago when they wrote it, and that's how it still is. And we've had folks before file in 2019 when we had the congressional 3 because Walter Jones passed away. We had some folks from Charlotte and Raleigh file to run for congressional 3.
Wow.
So as long as you fulfill the other requirements as far as age and residency within the state, you can file for any congressional. Now, all the rest, you have to live in the district.
So have we had anybody, I don't think we've had anybody win the congressional that wasn't at least on this side of the
That's right.
9-5.
That's right. Yeah. It's with the 3rd congressional district with Dr. Murphy. It's very close, where he lives, and the line gets close to him between the 1st and 3rd, but he is within the 3rd, and Representative Butterfield, he's definitely in the 1st. But that's going to be the interesting thing, is drawing in this new district, if they do add one, where those lines are going to go and what's going to happen with the incumbents. Are they going to be now in a different district to have to decide then, am I going to run in this new district, or should I stay with the district that I've been in? Even though I don't live in that district, should I stay there? Because I can, anybody can do that.
Right.
So that's going to be some interesting political shakeups there as to what happens. Now with let's see, I've got, as far as age, for president, you have to be 35. For the U.S. Senate, that we're going to have an election next year, and for governor, that will be in 22, have to be 30. And the U.S. representative, so like Congressman Butterfield and Murphy, and then North Carolina Senate, you have to be 25 or older. And then all the others are 21. Is the age requirement. So a lot of folks will think, and we run into this sometimes with the local elections like municipal, where from time to time we'll have an ECU student want to file. And you would think, okay, you have to be 18 to register to vote, so that means you can run for an office. No, you have to be 21 to be eligible to file, and that's per North Carolina Constitution. So that's not up to the municipalities to decide. That's in the state law. And then there's various, depending on the level that you're filing for, residency requirements. Municipal is pretty simple. You have to reside within the district or the municipality at the time of the election. And then from there, it kind of moves up as to years living in the state or living in the district.
there's no limit on age. I mean, you can run at 100 if you want to.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the cost to register to run?
That's really varies. Now, your cheapest ones are during your municipal years, because the filing fees for all offices has to be a minimum of $5, and so that's where you'll see a lot of our municipalities, especially smaller ones, they just go with the $5.
Mm-hmm.
And it can go up to 1% of the salary for that. So years like next year, that's where you'll see $700, $800, $1,000 filing fees,
Mm-hmm.
because of that, what the salary is for those, depending on judge seats, are usually kind of expensive. Likewise with the state Senate and congressional.
Mm-hmm.
Those, when you look at the 1% of the salary, and also those are set by statute. Here is the filing fee for those.
Right.
And then county wise, it's going to be that 1% of the salary.
Mm-hmm. So save up a little bit if you're interested in
Yes.
some of those higher levels that might cost you a little more.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So it sounds like we're in a hurry up and wait situation when it comes to the next round of elections. Anything you want to share with our audience on being patient, or just any wise sages as we are waiting for all of this to occur?
Yeah, that's definitely it, is be patient, follow the news, contact our office, look at the webpage of State Board Elections, General Assembly, our webpage, just to kind of see where things are. Because unfortunately, we can knock on wood that they'll draw the lines and that's it, we're done. But we know through the past several years that odds are there's going to be lawsuits, disagreements as far as the lines, and it's going to have to wind up in the courts, like we saw with congressional, where the lines have been shifting for the past few years.
Right.
And that's where a lot of folks are thinking, and the state board was looking at it as, even if the data is available by the end of September, it's still going to take a few months for the lines to be drawn and then for offices to get that data in there. And that's not including any lawsuits, any delays by courts. So definitely stay tuned to the news, here and all the major media networks as to what is happening. There's a lot of voting talk now, like Georgia has a lot of things going on that folks are talking about. And so that's one important thing too for the viewers to be aware of. When it comes to voting and the redistricting, every state has its own laws and rules. So what you may be seeing happening in another state won't be happening here. So kind of look and see what's going on in other states, and then definitely focus on North Carolina, because we go by North Carolina, election law.
Right. Have you or your cohort seen any kind of action like what's been going on in Georgia as far as voting laws that now are getting ready to go through some courts, it sounds like?
Yeah. Arizona had gone to and I haven't gotten an update on that. I haven't followed that lately because they had some issues going on that went to the Supreme Court. And that's where it's interesting, because some little laws here or there will be some things that we've had here forever. For example, in Arizona, one of the rules going, or the new legislation they passed that was going to the Supreme Court, was about that an absentee ballot can only be delivered to our office by the voter or a near relative.
Right.
And that's been the law here in North Carolina for a long time. Or you can mail it into us, but that's the only way we can get it. Where Arizona had been essentially anybody could bring it in. And so they have switched their law to match ours, but that has gotten a lawsuits filed and taken to the court and gone to the Supreme Court. So that is one of those areas where, depending on how they rule on that specific issue, could have an effect on North Carolina, because that's the way we've operated for years. And so if they say that that's not proper, North Carolina may have to address that. So, but then there are definitely a lot of other things that are being changed that isn't happening here in North Carolina, and kind of makes you, wonder, like, could that happen here? So, yeah, it's definitely important to watch the news, see what's going on, and from good, follow the media from good sources, where they've got all the facts and can get that info out to you.
Right. All right. Well, we thank you so much for joining us for our citizenship series. We thought it was a great time to share all this information, since it didn't look like we were going to make the usual deadlines.
Yeah.
So we'll again hurry up and wait and just see how it all shakes out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about it keeps it interesting, that's for sure.
Yes, it does.
You do not have a dull job, Dave.
No. Even, you would think in years like this, municipal years where it's kind of quiet. No. In 19, we had the congressional special elections, and then this year, redistricting. So a lot of what ifs and what's going to happen.
Definitely. All right. Thanks again, DaveDavis, our Pitt County Board of Elections Director. We appreciate you being with us today, and we'll surely invite you back another time for more explanations about what's going on. But thanks again.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.